Uh, Welcome to Subramani. I'm going to talk about debt, not debt as an investment, but debt as something which you have got into, and how do you get out of it. So, first of all, the easiest way to repay debt is by taking money from somebody and paying it off, right? So, if you are a 22-year-old who has got into debt, and you go and tell your dad, I made a mistake, I want money to repay the debt, and dad gives you money, that's a very poor sign that your dad is not giving you any lessons in borrowing. Instead, he is bailing you out. That's one of the worst things to happen. Now, let us say you are a 35-year-old or a 36-year-old and you are run into debt. Why do people run into debt? I could do 10 videos on that, which could even be poor investment management. You did F&O, you made losses, and now you lost 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs. You don't know what to do. You're even afraid to tell your wife or your parents that you've got into debt. Obviously, when you get into debt doing this, you don't want to disclose. Second is when you get into debt because somebody had to be admitted in hospital, you paid for it, did not have adequate insurance, so you got into debt. So here all your friends and neighbors and relatives and wife and parents, everybody knows about it, but they're not going to be doing anything about it because there is a Marwadi saying which says जो काम पैसा कर सकता है वो सिर्फ पैसा कर सकता है. That is so true. So I am saying you got into debt and now you are, how do you come out of it? That's the more important question. So first of all, if you understand Alcoholics Anonymous, when you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to first admit that you are an alcoholic. That's why you are there, but you have to say it loud and clear for yourself to hear and for everybody to hear. I have an alcohol problem, I get drunk, I beat up my wife, I do this, I do that, etc., etc. Whatever are the problems, you have to talk about it and say you have a drinking problem. Only then can you solve it. Exactly like that, even for your debt, you have to sit and make a confession statement saying you got into debt and these are the reasons why you got into debt and these are the steps which you are willing to take. But at least first admit that you got into debt and you are in debt, and that's a debt which is far more difficult for you to handle. Your debt is 40 lakhs. This is non-mortgage debt. You don't have any assets to show. You have lost money and this 40 lakhs has to be repaid and your CTC is some 7 lakhs. So next 6 years income is already on the boil and you have to repay, and the interest is going to kill you because interest from some informal sources, etc., even from a credit card, could be as high as 42%. So you will never be able to repay such a big loan. Is that your fear, right? So first of all, admit that you have a problem, admit the size of the problem, and then see how to solve it. So how do you get out of such a big debt? Obviously, fairly obviously, you have to look for some assets which you can sell and pay off these. There is absolutely no way how you can sustain a 42% debt or even an 18% debt or a 22% debt, right? And if you have credit card debt, those are the rates which are crippling you. There is no way how you can repay this debt out of your earnings. You don't earn that 42% kind of return in any other asset class. So you have to look for assets which you will use to pay off the debt. Step 2, you have to get into some agreements, written or oral, with your parents or with your spouse or with somebody saying please give me a interest free loan with which I have to repay this, because you will not be able to repay out of your own income unless you go abroad, you take up a greater job, you pay less taxes, and let's say you start earning 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs, it's possible for you to repay 50,000, 75,000 per month. Because if you're going to earn 6-7 lakhs in India and have a 30 lakh 40 lakh kind of a debt and you have to run your family, there is no way how you will be able to repay this. This is a huge amount compared to your CTC, and your CTC itself is very low because you will need 2-3 lakhs for running your household. Apart from that, only you will be able to repay, right? So first get into the fact that you have made a mistake, you've got into debt, change the lifestyle, change the things that you did, stop believing your RM who says, sir, one more deal and you will recover all the losses in F&O. You won't. It's the fund house or the brokerage house which will recover, right? And let me tell you, I'm biased. I could be a shareholder of the bank which runs that brokerage house. So there's nobody wanting to give you the advice saying repay the loan. Nobody wants to tell that because people want to earn interest out of it, right? they're more interested in you paying interest than in you repaying the loan, because they've got a nice bakra who has lost money, who is paying interest, right? So find out some way to just junk the whole debt by repaying, by selling off some assets, some house lying somewhere which you have bought long ago, which is not appreciating, or even if it has appreciated, it is not appreciating at 42% per annum. There is no place in the world where real estate appreciates 42% per annum. No other asset class appreciates that kind of a thing, right, on a consistent basis. It's impossible. So if you have credit card debt, you have no choice but to sell off whatever assets you have to repay the loan, unless if you can borrow from your parents and the amount itself is not too big for them. Let's say your father has a net worth of 20 crores and you have run a 40 lakh debt. It is possible for him to repay that by putting some very severe conditions on you maybe, but at least the family has enough cash flow to repay this loan. What happens if you don't have that also? What happens if you are lower middle class or middle class and you're struggling with that loan? Then life becomes far more difficult. So go out there, confess, then start repaying, create a plan. There are people who are willing to give you advice on how to do debt repayment. No, these are not the mutual fund advisors. There are one or two maybe mutual fund advisors who also do this, but largely this is start making a plan, see the most expensive debt, repay that first, see if you can get a loan from your provident fund. Not a very sensible thing to do, but when you have a 42% loan on your head, not everything that you did was sensible, because of which you got there. So I'm not being judgmental as to how you got there, but having got there, it is necessary to take some hard steps to get rid of assets which you can't afford to have, right? Of course, it does not help saying, oh, I sold off the TV, I sold off the fridge. That doesn't help, because that will each fetch you 5,000 rupees. It's not going to help if your loan is 40 lakhs, right? So those may not help, but some other assets which you are holding for whatever reasons, or something which your mother or father-in-law, somebody is willing to say, okay, I can give you 10 lakhs, but you have to repay in 2 years and I will not charge you interest. Fantastic. Your debt of 40 lakhs comes down to 30 lakhs, right? Or you go and tell your father, look, anyway I'm going to inherit this money, can you give some of it in advance, and then you make sure that in the will you give me that much less. So because that's a one-time thing which you don't have to repay, that's one other advantage. So something like that, or pawning the gold in your house to borrow against that again the rate of interest won't be 42%. So do some of these things to start, and then once the debt gets manageable, you can see whether you can repay faster and things like that. First of all, try coming out. You're 30 feet underwater, try coming up to the surface, and then you can put your head up and breathe, right? That's what you can do. Thank you.